Okay, question 1. If the only meeting that Montreal hosts is in the spring, which one of the following could be true? Okay, so the only one that M hosts is in the spring, which means M does not host a meeting in the fall, which means neither does H. So M doesn't host in the fall, H doesn't host in the fall. We have 3 spots we have to fill in the fall and only 5 players, which means every other player has to host a meeting in the fall. And we know that H has to host at least one meeting, so H must host a meeting in the spring. And then there's some player that's going to host in both the fall and the spring. So one of these 3 players has to be doubled up. Are there any restrictions there? So if we add V to the spring, we'd have to add T as well, but we don't have room for it. So that cannot be V. But O is wild, and if we add T to the spring, that doesn't trigger anything. So those are my 2 possibilities for this question-specific condition. Okay, so I can also add these possibilities to my bank of acceptable solutions just by adding a check mark and then noting that I can go back to that and use it as an acceptable solution to potentially remove an answer choice. If we're looking for something that's false and we see here that it could be true, we can remove an answer choice maybe in a later question. All right, so back to question 1. If the only meeting that Montreal hosts is in the spring, these are our options, and what could be true? Could Honolulu host meetings in both semesters? No. Tampa in both semesters? Yes. Okay, so B's got to be the correct answer. Honolulu in the fall? No. Omaha in the spring? Only? Okay, no, it could be in both, but it can't be only in the spring. And Tampa hosting in the spring only? No. Tampa has to be in the fall for sure. Okay. Question 13. So I've labeled that question 1. It was question 12 technically. Question 13. If Omaha hosts 2 of the meetings, then which one of the following must be true? So we do have a potential example of that, right? So whatever must be true if Omaha hosts 2 of the meetings has to be true in a scenario where we have TOV in the fall and MHO in the spring. So A, Honolulu hosts in the fall, doesn't have to happen. So we can eliminate A. B, Tampa hosts in the fall. That has to be true here, but it might not have to be true all the time. Montreal in the spring, that's true here. H and V host meetings in the same semester as each other, doesn't have to be true. And T and V host meetings in the same semester as each other, well, that is true here. Okay, so clearly there must be some other possible scenario where Omaha hosts 2 of the meetings. So let's switch it up and put M and H in the fall, right? So if H is in the fall, M is in the fall, and put V and T in the spring, right? If V is in the spring, T is in the spring. Okay, so does Tampa have to host a meeting in the fall? No. Does Montreal have to host a meeting in the spring? No. Because we have an acceptable solution here where that doesn't happen. But E, do Tampa and Vancouver host meetings in the same semester as each other? They do. Right? Or here, yeah. So more for the bank of acceptable solutions. And E must be the correct answer. 14. Which one of the following cannot be an accurate partial matching of the cities with the semesters in which they host meetings? It cannot work. So here we eliminate things that could be true. If we've seen them in previous acceptable solutions, then we can always eliminate. So A, I don't have an example of that here, so I can just skip that for now. B, do we have Montreal in the fall and Honolulu and Tampa in the spring? We don't have an example of that either. C, Omaha in the fall, Montreal and Tampa in the spring. So we do have an example of that from question 12. So C we can eliminate. Honolulu and Tampa in the fall, we don't have an example of that. Honolulu, Vancouver in the fall. No, we don't have an example of that either. Okay, so let's take a moment just to see the possibilities here and maybe some things that might be triggered. Okay, so if I have, let's start with A. So if I have Honolulu in the fall, then so's Montreal, and then Honolulu and Vancouver in the spring. Well, T would be over here. We'd have O over here. No problem with that. Okay, so another acceptable solution. Montreal in the fall, and Honolulu and Tampa in the spring. So yeah, that doesn't really trigger anything, right? So I mean, here this has to be either M or V, and then we'd have to have O here, and yeah, I mean, we could put V here. That's not gonna be a problem. If we put V in the spring, we'd have to put Tampa in there as well, but Tampa's already there. Yeah, no problem with that one. D, Honolulu and Tampa in the fall. Okay, so we need Montreal in the fall, and then we need V and O, and if V is in the spring, T is in the spring. Okay, Honolulu, Vancouver. Here, if Honolulu is in the fall, so is Montreal. V and V, O. Okay, so let's go through our rules again here. H in the fall, M is in the fall. T, O. Here, M is in the fall, doesn't trigger anything. O, H. It's in the spring, doesn't trigger anything. T is in the spring in all of these. M is in the fall in all of these. We've got M, V, M, M or V, M, V, M, V. Must be missing something. Did I misinterpret something here? Oh, what did I do here? I did not, yeah, I did something weird with D. Wait, Honolulu and Tampa in the fall. So then Montreal has to be there. And then V and O have to be, yeah, this doesn't work because actually Montreal is supposed to be in the spring in that one to test D. I didn't test D correctly. That was my issue. Yeah, that's not a correct test of V. So V, I should have started like this. And then H and T, H being in the fall means M is also in the fall. And then, of course, we need V and O in the spring, but if we put V in the spring, we're supposed to put T, and we don't have room. So that one's out. Yeah, so D can't work. Sorry about that. All right, 15. Which one of the following cannot be in either semester the group of cities hosting the 3 meetings? So can't work in either semester. So, I mean, we could go through the acceptable solutions that we have because we have created quite a few of them. Or we can look at this one with just like the triggers and the rules. So if H, M, and T are in the fall, then that shouldn't be a problem. Okay, doesn't look like it triggers anything. So I would actually focus on H and V being the triggers. So B, we have H, M, and V. That could work if they were in the fall. C, H, O, and V. So if H, O, and V are in the fall, then we're missing Montreal. And if H, O, and V are in the spring, then we're missing Tampa. Okay. So H, O, and V can't be the group of cities hosting the 3 meetings in either the fall or the spring. So C has to be the correct answer here. Okay, 16. That was question 15. Question 16. If Tampa hosts 2 of the meetings, okay, so Tampa's doubled up here. Okay. Then which one of the following could be true? H and V both host meetings in the fall. Nope, because if H does, then M should as well, and we wouldn't have room. M and O both host meetings in the fall. So if we have M and O, then we'd have T, V, and H. So VS leads to TS. H isn't in the fall. And we have M in one, V in the other. So B is possible. Moving on to question 17, last question here. So if Honolulu hosts a meeting in the fall, then so does M. Which one of the following must be true? Okay, so M does as well. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's too much else I can deduce from that right away. So I'm just going to go into the answer choices and see if it's possible that the negation could be true. So could it be true that O doesn't host a meeting in the fall, so O just hosts in the spring, and then let's say V hosts in the fall and in the spring? That seems possible. Okay, Montreal hosts a meeting in the spring, so is it possible that Montreal doesn't host in the spring? Yes, we have an example of that already. B, Omaha hosts a meeting in the spring, so that's possible. Does it have to be true? So could we have O here and then have V, T, and M? Don't see why not. Vancouver hosts in the spring, Tampa hosts in the spring. So those things happen, but do they have to be true? Okay, so Tampa. Is it possible for Tampa to just host a meeting in the fall? No, because then Vancouver has to host a meeting in the spring, and Tampa, as a result, is supposed to host a meeting in the spring. So it's possible for Tampa to host meetings in both, but it's definitely not possible for Tampa to host a meeting in just the fall. So it must be true that Tampa hosts a meeting in the spring, which is answer choice D. All right, so that's game 3. Sorry for the confusion there at one point. I was a little bit scattered for this one. I do think it's probably the toughest game in the section, although game 4, I believe that one was challenging as well. So we'll go on to that one next. Yeah, but this one definitely took a little bit longer, and I got a bit, I just went a little bit too fast, I think, on question 14, and didn't actually properly test one of the answer choices. So I think the method I was using there was also sort of a falsification method, or no, it was trial. I was just trying to see if I could create an acceptable solution, but I didn't add all of the components. Here I was doing some falsification. So yeah, I think that one, it just kind of took a little bit more organization and I don't know, a little bit more thoughtfulness. And so I think I probably ended up doing a bit more work like in my head. So I imagine there were more pauses, because I'm just doing this real time, and it's been a while since I've done the game. So sometimes it's organizing my thoughts at the same time that I'm speaking, just kind of thinking out loud. But hopefully that helps, and I'll do game 4 next.